And he looked at me, and I looked at him, and then he goes, Butterscotch? And I go, yeah. And he goes, Sam? And I go, yeah. And he goes,
Butterscotch. Hey, everybody. Welcome to episode 134 of Coffee with Butterscotch, the game dev comedy podcast of Butterscotch Shenanigans. I'm Seth, and I'm the games programmer.
I'm Adam, and I'm doing a lot of copy pasting.
I'm Sam, and I'm making art.
And this is a show where we talk about life, business, and working in the games industry. Today is January 22nd, 2018. Exclamation mark. 18. Before we get started, we have a warning. Anything can happen on this show. There's going to be profanity. Definitely. If you don't like that, if you got sensitive ear tubes, get out of here.
See a doctor.
Or you're going to get some ear abrasions from all the abrasive language.
That's true.
All right. So we got some news today. Last week, we spent the whole week working on our new game, which we have a name for, but we're not going to reveal it yet. Yeah. Why are we not going to reveal it? Because we need to lock that shit down.
Yeah.
We mostly have.
Yes.
I think we have. It's now on the App Store. Not publicly, of course, but it's now on the App Store. It's now on Google Play. We still got to lock down Steam, though.
But the neat thing, though, is that all the stores now, I got to check into Google Play. I can't remember if they have it, but Apple now has early sort of sign up for games.
Sort of a pre-order, but not really.
It's more like a
Kickstarter.
Yeah, almost. It's like a sign up, and then when the game goes live, then you get charged. So as opposed to getting the money before, which is probably actually a smarter way to do pre-orders, frankly, right? I mean,
yeah, as in I'll buy this game when it comes out. Well, I think it depends, because if you're the kind of person who's living paycheck to paycheck and you have your gaming budget down to the fucking dime, and you can't be like, just charge me whenever.
Yeah, right. But yeah. So and Apple's is I think it's a 90-day window. So as soon as you're like, hey, this is going to happen, it has to happen. You have to launch the game in 90 days.
So you're locked in.
Yeah. And then I can't remember if Google Play is doing it, but I think they've something similar.
What happens if you do?
I don't know. Probably nothing.
Then they delete all your pre-orders. Everybody is sad.
Yeah,
you're sad. The players are sad.
And then Steam has their coming soon thing. So basically what we're going to do is before we announce it, we'll actually get it. We'll get those things set up so that we have all the pieces in play before someone can go and just like steal the name because it's a good name.
It is a good name. Yeah. We spent our naming process was 45 minutes of going through Thesaurus, trying to find synonyms, all this stuff. And then Sam looked up phrases about, I'm not going to say it.
Yeah, so phrases, this is actually one of my favorite ways to do it now. Is just if you have a word or a concept that is sort of integral to the whole thing you're trying to build, is just look up phrases with, and then whatever that word is.
With this word in them.
And I don't know how this works. I don't know who's doing this.
Who did this?
But someone has collected, all of the phrases and then
just every phrase.
Made basically a searchable thing. So any word you put in there, they're like, oh, you want to hear about birds? All the phrases involving birds. Here's a list of like 300 bird phrases. And then you can just look through there. And so it allows you to get kind of it helps you, I think a little bit more, laterally, but also oftentimes within the constraints of the language. In a way
it also helps you get hokey.
It does. Yeah. Because you find stuff in there where you're like, what?
I still remember forever ago, and I don't even remember what game it was for, but we were looking up what we were calling old people words, though our father was not impressed.
I was like, hey, Dad, could you tell me more of those old people words? And he's like, fuck you. Those are just my words.
Those are whippersnapper. Those are words I grew up with.
But it was hilarious because we just found these lists of them that people had curated of just, and I don't know what they called them, but they were effectively just kind of old timey colloquialisms, but those lists are real fun.
They're great. Things like boondoggle, whippersnapper, rapscallion. You'll notice that we use these words a lot because they're all great.
They're good words.
Yeah.
You got to be careful though, because a lot of them have a sordid past.
Yes. Yep. So actually, the first thing we did was we made a list of all of them, and then we're going to use them, I think, as enemy names in one of the games that we canceled a while ago. And then I had to go through and look up like, is blank racist was basically sort of the question. Right. And like a good fifth of them had some real dark.
It's real bad.
And you wouldn't even know nowadays.
Yep. And about half of them were sexist. Yep. And then,
it's stupid because they sound so whimsical and fun as words. And then when you look at the hidden meaning behind them, you're like, oh. So you got to be careful. You got to know your words. So last week we got the name, and then we got Rumpus, which is our web technology integrated. So now in the game, You can build your levels. You can publish them to the web, and then other players playing the game can see the list of publicly available levels and play them. So that's 3 weeks of dev that's done now. We've closed the door on 3 weeks where we have something like 40 something unique mechanics you can put into your levels. You can make a username, you can sign in, you can publish things to the web, and you can play other people's levels. So we did it in 3 weeks.
And I think my favorite part about it was
good.
I had built to test out a bunch of the overall mechanics of the game and sort of get some better game feel notes for Seth. I had put together just this really densely intense level. It's called Garden Path, because the idea is it'll try to make you do something and you're supposed to do something else, right? It's the concept of Garden Path. And you lead someone to something and then you kill them basically at the end of the day. So in a level.
Very sinister.
Very sinister. So I finished this thing and it's harder than shit. And so I finally beat it. And we had this problem
because you have to beat the level to publish it,
right,
which is a concept that we are borrowing from Mario Maker because it works.
It's very smart.
It works perfectly as a means of filtering out impossible levels. The creator of the level has to beat it, and at that moment they can choose to publish it.
Right. And so the problem was I had noticed earlier that you could actually beat a level in debug mode and then publish it, which means that you could basically spawn yourself right above the exit point
And then just
publish it. And so I had beaten the whole thing, but misclicked and didn't click on the publish button, which actually just reset the level. And so I was like, oh shit. And so I just moved over there and started the debugger to see if I could just hop in and publish it. And then the publish button didn't appear. And I was like, Seth, did you already put this in? He's like, yeah, you asked for it. So then another 10 minutes went by. So the last 30 minutes of Thursday last week was me repeatedly beating this level because I kept on accidentally not publishing it. Finally got to publish it. And then ended up watching Seth, I think for 15 minutes or so, just die a ton of times trying to beat this thing and then finally beat it. And it was super fun. It's just so good to watch people, I guess in this case, die as they're trying to work their way through creation.
Yeah. And what I'm most excited about is the discoverability problem.
Yes.
Which is a thing that basically very few platforms have solved in a meaningful sense.
Everyone's got their methods.
Yeah. So the problem with discoverability is when you've got thousands or tens of thousands or millions or billions of things that you can show to a person, how do you decide what to surface, right?
Well, there's an earlier side too, which is how do you make it so that as much of the stuff that's in there is worth surfacing in the first place?
Right. So you gotta
get quality up front.
And so Google is sort of the pinnacle of this, discoverability thing, because that's basically their whole model.
Their model is don't worry about it. They don't worry about the first part.
They just say we're just only going to focus on the searcher, the person doing the searching, and try to guess what they mean and give them just the thing they need, right? Because when you Google stuff, you're going to look at the top 2 to 3 results, and then everything else you're like, that's probably irrelevant, right? Even though it may say returned 14 million results for this thing that you search for.
Yeah, no one goes beyond the first page,
let
alone the first 6 items. And
so on something like the App Store or Google Play, where there's 7,000 games coming out a week, discoverability is a big deal, because as developers, you make your game, you put it out there, and if the store doesn't surface it to people when they search for it or just on the home page or whatever, then nobody will play it.
Yeah, and
years of work just disappear.
I would actually make the argument now that the stores take 30% of everybody's revenue, right? Yeah, and I am personally of the viewpoint that them earning their keep involves actually tackling this discoverability problem nowadays, because all the other tech is it's been the same. Yeah, nothing's actually changed about how we upload stuff and how they handle all that. But the problem that has been getting bigger and bigger and bigger is this discoverability issue. And it used to be the case that you were essentially guaranteed some number of, eyeballs on everything that came out. And that was part of the pitch for all the stores was, put it here, people will find it.
Which millions of people using our store. And so people will see your game.
Right. And it's just not quite the case anymore. So yeah, it's an interesting
one. So we have this problem with the levels in this platformer builder thing that we're making, which is we're going to have, I assume we're going to have hundreds of millions of people making.
Well, it is a paid game, so there'll probably be 12 people.
There's going to be 12 people.
And then a jillion pirates
and hundreds of millions of pirates trying to play these games, these levels made by the 12 people who bought it. And the question is, how do we make this a good experience for both the pirates, the 12 million pirates, as well as the 12 people who bought the game? Because when you make a level, you want people to see it. And when you're playing levels, you want to play good levels, right? And so we're taking a page out of social media's book, and we're going to try to. So this is an idea we have. We haven't executed it yet, so no promises. Right? It's just development chat.
Yeah.
So we want to come up with a sort of a follower system where so you can search through a list of levels, and if you have a level that you really like, you can just follow the creator of that level. And you'll have a little feed thing that'll show you sort of a constantly updating stream of levels made by all the people that you're following. So kind of like how when you follow somebody on Facebook, you go to your homepage, your news feed, and it just shows you all people's baby pictures. This is like that, except it's
all
stuff
awesome
that's
stuff.
actually good that you want to engage with.
So should be nice. Yeah, and then we're looking at building basically a playlisting system that works similar to what you'd see on something like YouTube. I mean, anybody on YouTube can go and essentially cobble together a playlist that is somehow thematically, oriented, and then people can either subscribe to, like, you can just pull that playlist down and sort of save it for yourself, or subscribe to that person because they make good playlists. And so that's another interesting thing that some of these, in Super Mario Maker in particular, doesn't allow you to do is there's no power in someone just acting as a curator. So, for example, maybe I don't like building levels, but I love playing them, and I got good design sense, and so I have collected, all these awesome levels. It'd be really cool if you could
share that collection.
Right? And so, and then we'll do,
and then everybody gets credit because you can see the usernames and everything. So you can see the username for the list, so the person who curated. You see the usernames of all the people who made it, all the little components. So it's good.
So basically,
ecosystem.
we have like 3 more weeks to make
all that
Facebook
in this game
plus Mario Maker.
The reason I'm confident is because Adam made Battle.net in like about 6 weeks.
Yep.
So I think
the reason that I'm confident is because as we've envisioned everything, I actually don't have to do any more work to make this happen.
Yeah, so
this
it's
is
a
all
lot of
Seth's
UIs.
problem now.
The reason that we can do this is because Rumpus is the web technology that Adam spent the last basically year putting together. And it is a super generic API that's like a crazy, it's almost like Dropbox.
Yeah.
Where we can just really easily generate files of any kind and push them over to the server, pull them down. They can be attached to certain users and have what we can set up rules and permissions for them. And so we were talking about how do we publish levels to the web so that other people can download them. And Adam's like, oh yeah, we'll just use the same system. We just need to like check this box. Right. Boom, it's done.
Yep. It is one checkbox that allows that.
Yeah, it
allows
is.
a user to publish content.
Yeah.
And then we said, well, we don't want people to be able to edit stuff because what happens if you have a whole bunch of high scores on a level that people have submitted and now you go change your level, then now all those high scores don't mean anything. So we have to wipe it. And we just said, well, we just don't want to do that. So now if you publish a thing, it just has to be
when you publish a level.
So it's just checking another box.
Yeah. So the way the game works then is you can edit a level as much as you want, but then as soon as you publish it, it's gone.
The level is gone.
It's no longer in your editable level library, and you have pushed it out onto the web. It's in a permanent state now for the world to enjoy. So you kind of think about it like if you put a YouTube video up.
Same idea.
You can't then be like, I'm going to add a scene to this.
Which does sometimes suck because you're like, oh.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing
yeah, but whatever.
It does as the user of the thing, it feels like a serious limitation to not be able to edit the thing that you've made, or in the case of the requirement that you beat your level before you publish it.
Right.
It also feels unfair because if you're not a very good player, but you feel like you've got great design sense, then you can make something that you think is amazing and that you're just 100% certain can be beat, or at least is a hugely enjoyable experience. And so you want to just be able to publish it anyway. And so it is absolutely the case that for a lot of people are going to feel like this is kind of a bummer that they have these constraints. But if we didn't have those constraints, then the curation problem,
then everything goes to shit.
Is a fucking nightmare because now all of a sudden we have a million minor variations of every single level that exists. Because people they keep on making tweaks over time and republishing, or they can build on each other's work.
Well, and if there's 100 different versions of the level that you just got the high score for, your high score now it means nothing. Because somebody else may have played the harder or easier one and gotten a better high score than you did.
And if our curation and system sort of identifies things that are similar that people like the same, then you're going to see 5 of the same level with minor variations back to back when you go do a search or something.
Right.
So there's that, and then when it comes to the requirement for publishing or for beating your level, that's the same kind of a deal because it's trivially easy to make a level that isn't fun and is unbeatable.
Correct.
That's the default.
That's the default. It's in fact far easier to make an unbeatable level than a beatable one. And I was having a discussion with somebody about this who strongly disagreed, which was actually Flavin, who might be listening to this podcast right now.
One of our podcasts.
We were having this discussion.
About to go on blast.
You guys got coffee. You guys got coffee, didn't you?
Yeah, we're having this discussion about the rationale for doing this because his stance was, well, just let people figure it out, right? Because if they have the option, then people can play stuff just because it's fun. The sort of focus on being able to beat a thing doesn't have to be what's important. But the thing that was important to me was that if we want to allow people to make really hard levels, then that only works if the person playing that level can trust that things are possible.
Yes, that it's not hard just because it's literally
impossible. It's literally impossible. Yeah. So if there's a jump that looks impossible, but the game has been published, then it's not impossible. Right. You know that it can. And now there's some way.
So basically, this gives people hope.
It gives people hope. Well, it gives people hope, and it gives them trust in the system. Because the moment that that's not true anymore, the moment that any level that you download, when you see a jump, it might literally be impossible. Then now there's all of the whole incentive, all of the drive to given some hard challenge to trying to overcome it goes away because you don't actually know if it's even possible anymore. Right.
Yep.
And so
you try stuff and you're like, well, fuck this. And then you just stop playing.
And the other thing is we have, because of all the other mechanics in it, we actually have a really rich puzzle element to the whole game. Yep. Like if you want, you could actually build really robust and weird puzzles using push blocks and pressure levers and switches and portals. Sort of stuff. And I made in this garden path level, I made it so you had to jump up and there are these fade blocks that are like sort of heavy fog, right? So you can step on it and then after a short time it dissipates and it's gone forever. And there's a push block on one of them. And then there's an enemy far, far, far down below. So you're up in the sky at this point. And if you don't kill the enemy that's down below, that's sort of hovering above a pressure switch, then if you push that puzzle block off, then it of course just lands on the enemy's head and it can't actually hit the button. So what we have to do is you have to jump off of the enemy's heads to sort of climb up like 3 stories essentially, and then jump onto this bank of fog, shove the push block off, jump
before the fog dissipates,
and then jump in the air while the platforms disappear. And then the door opens essentially like just a moment later because the pressure switch is now clicked because the block fell down, right?
Yeah. And and if you're coming into that, you have to know that's possible.
Yes, exactly.
Because if you don't know if that's possible, you're looking at it and you're going to say, no.
What the hell's
right. Yeah, this is just somebody fucking with it.
Which it is true, but it's also beatable, which is the important thing. Other news is Crashlands 2-year anniversary.
Yeah,
was
yesterday.
I feel like we're waking up from a hangover or something.
Yeah. I'm with you there.
Where it's like, what even happened in the past 2 years? A lot of things happened.
Too many things.
But I think
a lot did.
Something we talked about earlier, like a few episodes ago, is just the idea of sort of getting back to our roots and bringing our focus back to just delivering really good content to our players. Mm-hmm. And the past couple of years, we put a huge focus on figuring out like how do we become like a real business? Mm-hmm. Get the game onto more platforms and localize stuff everywhere and get stuff to new markets. And, expand our personnel and all this stuff and like reading management books. Mm-hmm. And that whole time we just didn't
make any games,
yeah. Which of course is ridiculous because that's sort of that's our whole thing. Kind of the point. Yeah.
Yeah. We should have been, for the last 2 years, we've been Butterscotch Shenanigans, a Crashland studio, not a game studio.
Yeah.
Well, the interesting thing about it is we've talked about this before, but we spent all the energy went to building the studio. Yeah, all of it. And I know it's weird I'm sure as a player, and of course anybody who listens to the podcast has sort of seen a little bit of this, the ups and downs. But the truth is that's really what 90% of our energy has been devoted to, and so it's been frankly just like weird. And yeah, I had the same feeling when I was looking back, and I was like, what
happened?
Mm-hmm. What happened? And luckily, I mean the Crashlands is still kind of kicking, which allows us to not stress about just like punching games out that are garbage because we still have enough revenue.
Yeah, well, this is something that people rarely talk about is that like, but before we launched Crashlands, I remember one of the reasons we picked a launch date was because we had $500 left in the bank. We were like, we have to get this.
Well, you guys actually weren't even being paid. Yeah. So
by that point,
so,
we
yeah,
were for a while,
yeah.
and then the flop rocket and quadrupus money kind of trickled off, right?
And it wasn't much in the first place.
It was very little. But we kind of hit that point where we were like, we have to get this thing out. And even in the midst of Crashlands, you know, like, oh, we need to get something out because we're running on empty, right? So we made Flop Rocket and published that thing. And once you get a game out that actually does well, then that pressure is gone, right? And so
now all of a sudden there's no more constraints. So now you're like, what should we try? And you look at what other people are doing, and you have all these visions of the future that could be, and you just start trying all of those visions, you know? And
because there is no limitation. And this is kind of like we talked about a while back on the podcast about the problem of being immortal, you know, and how how nothing means anything anymore, and there's no pressure to do anything. So why do anything, right? And the same thing kind of happens where like once that time pressure is gone to actually produce stuff, then you just kind of don't.
Yeah, it's very easy to. Well, I think really what it is actually you still do, but you do it in such a different way, and that's actually what was happening because our focus became so intensely oriented around ramping the quality up.
Well, not only that, but we spent a lot of time doing experiments trying to figure out like what about the price of games? How does that affect things? And did pricing experiments with Crashlands and running analysis on that and things on like A/B testing our newsletters and A/B testing our icons and store descriptions and stuff like that. Right.
Which like was all neat, I guess.
Well, yeah, we learned a lot, and some of it was enormously valuable.
Yes.
And so looking back, I wouldn't say at all that we've wasted 2 years or anything like that.
No, I don't think so.
But it definitely, yeah, but it wasn't really what we thought we were going to spend our time doing. Correct. And it kind of snuck up on us just how much time actually we spent, because it is just kind of when somebody in our Discord yesterday was like, happy birthday Crashlands, and I was like, shit,
it's been 2 years.
We didn't even have that on the calendar. Like I didn't even know that was a thing.
Yeah. And even that, especially that first year after, we put out a couple of patches, we put a whole bunch of time into controller support and stuff like that. And we did expand the game, but again, we didn't have any new games in the works or coming out even until January of last year is when we started working on basically the next game. So, which was a year after Crashlands. Right. And so, I mean, we're getting back into it.
Yeah. Well,
this year.
I remember this, when my advisors in school said something that always scared the shit out of me, where she was like, you gotta be careful because I feel like you're the sort of person who's going to be just working really hard at a thing. And then like 10 years later, you're going to look up and wonder what the fuck just happened. Like you didn't plan whatever this was.
Yeah.
And
you
just
step
sort of,
back enough.
Yeah. You just sort of were along for the ride. And I think to a degree, like it's true. I don't feel like we've wasted our time in the sense of it's not that we haven't gotten anything in the last 2 years. I think it's just the case that we didn't necessarily get what we intended to get. Yeah. If that makes sense. And so, yeah, I'm really excited about 2018. Return to the roots. Quit fucking around. We got this platformer maker, which will be done soon. I mean, frankly, we could just publish the damn thing.
Pretty soon, we probably could.
Get like a few UIs in there and we're good.
Yeah, I still have to replace the website, though.
I mean, a few of the art pieces I think are ugly.
Yeah, but
some of them are still.
I think I only need if I have this whole week just to work on the website, then that'll be done. Mm-hmm. So then that'll be good to go.
Yeah. Well, I'm
going to burn down everything that Sam and Seth let me burn down. That's
literally everything because I don't care.
Because like we got this blog and I'm looking at this blog and I'm like, nobody reads this. It's
How
all wrong now.
It's so far down.
You can't
the page.
even find it.
Where does it even live?
What if we just?
I was thinking.
I was like, I want to write a sort of a dev blog because here's another thing is we used to do all this awesome shit that I loved doing, like dev blog posts, right? And then after Crashlands, we were like, ooh, but sometimes when people search for Crashlands, these old, screenshots come up from early in development, and maybe that like hurt us, but who gives a fuck? Maybe it did, maybe it didn't.
I don't know.
I think the important thing is that we stand in our truth, and we're like, we fucking love talking about making our games. So let's do that.
Right.
The end.
Just quit worrying about it.
Yeah, quit worrying about it.
Yeah, and as Sam was saying with like our newsletter,
2018,
trying to figure out like I was like maybe we should just not even have a blog and instead just have our newsletters and that people subscribe to, and if they want to hear what we have to say, they can just get it in their fucking inbox.
Sure.
And then we don't have to
Let's
worry
do it.
about it.
No, I want to keep the blog because I want to write fucking blog posts.
I mean, these would then just be
Sometimes.
newsletters instead. It would be equivalent. Just, they
You just put it in there.
they would just go to people's inboxes.
The whole idea is that
They could also show up. Anyway, we'll discuss this later.
the whole point is who gives a
The
fuck.
point, the point is we could just burn basically everything down.
Burn it. Burn it.
The podcast page will be burnt down soon.
The podcast page, it is the bottom of my priority list because
Or I guess, yeah, you
we can launch, like, everything can be fine. We can launch this new game. We can do all kinds of stuff without having that redone. But I would, if I can, if there's not more pressing stuff, as soon as I get the rest of the website rebuilt.
You already did a few fixes to it last week.
Yeah, last week, just for all your listeners who've interacted with the horrible podcast website,
Which is at podcast.bsketch.net.
So
Thank you for
shield
muscling.
your eyes a little bit when you get there. But it now has paging on the episodes
Wow,
list.
it's
because-
very Web 2.0.
I know, because it used to just be a long list of 130 episodes.
Some would say too many.
Some would say that and be correct.
You just keep scrolling.
and you just scroll forever. Then the questions are below that, and of course you just have to try to find the link that says click here to go to the questions. Or
My
whatever.
favorite one is actually to log in.
That is still a problem.
There's like a little tiny hyperlink. Just like one in a paragraph. It's like, oh, you need to log in to ask a question.
And also, you need to go to the forums to log in and then
Right.
go back to the
and
podcast.
that was because
at the time,
no, I mean still the Buddyscotch ID you can only log into in games, right?
Yeah.
And then I hacked into the forums to make it so that you could sort of log in, right? Using Buddyscotch ID into the forums, and so that allowed this one place on the internet that you could log into Buddyscotch ID, which was the forums. And my options at that point, once we had that going, and we had it going for a while before I made the podcast page, was either I could set up a login system, for real, and then.
that sounds like a lot of work.
It does, right? Or I could say,
honest.
well, I've already hacked this other thing. Probably I could just have it live on because it actually lives on the forums. The podcast.buddyscotch.net is actually forums.buddyscotch.net/podcast, right? That's where it lives. It lives in the podcast software.
It's part of
Or
the
forum
forums.
software, yeah.
I like that you just kind of look at the forum sideways and you're like, I could turn that into a podcast page.
If I just put a tube
Yeah, you just put a tube on it.
there.
There's a whole bunch of stuff like that. Like our contact page is really wacky because, and of course, nobody can tell what's happening behind the scenes. But our podcast page, or sorry, our contact page,
Does it also use the forums?
it doesn't. But it does use all the old legacy Buddyscotch ID stuff. So what happens if you submit something is it talks to the WordPress like a hacked in thing on WordPress because that's what our blog lives on, right? And that then behind the scenes just sends a request to the forums server because that's where the data it needs is at, right? And then that's where it loads things. And there's like this script running that just calls functions and on the Buddyscotch ID server. The whole thing is just a fucking spaghetti nightmare because every once in a while I have to go update something, and I'm like, this must have made sense at the time.
So it was like on
And it
day
does
one,
work.
Adam showed up at the studio with like a roll of duct tape and a hammer and was like, all right, I'm going to make
And that
It's not going to be pretty.
Time to bring you boys into the web century. Hope you're ready.
Yeah, I brought us into like 90s web, I think, when I joined the studio.
Let's get into the 2000s this year with Rumpus.
Oh, this year, I mean,
We're going real forward.
we're going into
fucking all out.
2020.
Yeah, we're going
Basically.
easily into. I like to stay about a year behind standards because if you're at the bleeding edge, that's
You're-
when
you're gonna bleed.
You're gonna
Yeah, you're
bleed.
bleeding.
Yeah, you're
That's-
just cut everywhere. It's horrible.
That's the thing.
Yep. And so to prevent us from bleeding to death, and I went back about a year, and I was like, what were people just fucking raging about and so pumped about?
So we're kind of
year
on
ago.
the like the dulled, sort of well-worn
exactly.
edge
Right.
of technology.
So now we're real. We're real modern right now.
Fuck
We
yeah.
jumped into the future 10 years with this new web tech. It's pretty
All
good.
right, well, let's hit some. So here's some other things we need to hit before we get on to some questions.
Oh, yeah.
So first thing, toxic communities. One of our favorite topics.
As you all know.
Toxic community watch.
Overwatch has one of the best toxic communities in the world.
It's just great.
Okay.
It's real toxic.
Award-winning toxicity all around. There was so they started a new thing called Overwatch League, which is like the Overwatch
Their official
esports,
esport for
which
Overwatch.
again, I fucking love that it's called esports because it takes me back to the days of Evites. And basically where anything over the internet had to have an E in front of it.
Yep.
Right.
The only thing that has survived that is email.
That's true.
So Overwatch
Someday it'll
League,
just be a sport.
it'd just be sports.
Yeah.
Some of them happen to be digital. Some of them happen to be analog, which is like football, right?
I'm gonna go play an analog.
Go play some analog sports. So Overwatch League, this pro got a $2,000 fine and got, I think, suspended, not
Yeah,
permanently.
he was
banned.
kicked for like a season or I don't know how their structure works, but
Yeah,
kicked
for throwing homophobic language toward a gay opponent.
which of course it wouldn't have been okay anyway, obviously. But then it was particularly egregious because it was an openly gay opponent. So, so this was not just your run of the mill, 13-year-old idiot.
This is a guy who's literally
literally hateful,
and
towards a group of
his
people.
job is to play Overwatch. Like he's doing this now professionally as an e-sportician, I think is the term.
So I was
Didn't matter. He's like, it's worth it. I'm going to risk it. I'm going to risk it all.
I'm just going to do it. So now this really annoyed the shit out of me. I mean, not even the fact that it happened. All that's obviously not great. But Blizzard's response was so fucking weak.
Suspended him for 2 weeks or whatever.
Suspended him for 2 weeks or whatever, as if this was a big deal. I'm like, fuck no. If your goal as a company is to basically make a public statement saying we don't support this kind of assholery, right?
Permanent ban.
You want to make
Permanent
an
ban.
omelet without any racial slurs in it?
Yeah,
You got to break
get rid of the racists.
eggs.
That's the only way.
Yeah.
You know? I mean, I assume he's also racist because those all go together.
Safe assumption.
It's a safe assumption. But yeah, I this is the part that's really aggravating to me is there's all this, all these AAA studios are like, oh, our communities are so toxic, we don't know what to do. And then this is how they handle stuff. They're just like, well, I mean, I guess it's okay because we punished you a little bit, and so maybe you won't do it again, right? But there's no attempt at all just to say, just to make a strong, absolute, unambiguous statement that not even just this behavior isn't allowed, but we don't want people like this here. Right. And I think that's what's missing is everything's focused on behavior. It's not just saying, if this is the kind of person you are, we don't want you here. We don't want your money.
Well, it's like if you're in a bar and you're being an asshole, you can get kicked out of the bar.
And punched.
And you can also be punched and thrown in the dirt, right?
Yeah.
By a bouncer.
Yeah. The interesting thing about games, of course, in game communities is that there's not necessarily an easy way to like actually kick someone out of the bar.
No, except in esports because you can see their fucking face.
Exactly, right?
You know
So,
exactly who they are.
There's the sponsorship and everything.
Yeah, it should be the easiest
This should be
place to do
so
it.
easy.
So yeah, I'm really curious what the continued shenanigans are in that.
Well, yeah, this takes me back to so Jeffrey Lynn was the lead psychologist at Riot Games, and basically this was his job was use psychology to try to keep people from being dicks to each other on the internet, and it didn't work.
Well, it did work. They did reduce toxicity.
They reduced it,
yeah.
But their stance was toward rehabilitation.
Right.
Yeah.
The idea being that if somebody joins an online game and just starts throwing out, homophobic slurs, racist slurs, whatever, that, you know what? They're just having an off day.
Yeah, I know. That was how they fucking described it.
Yeah, and it's like,
no, that person is an asshole.
Yeah, and it's like, this is normally just a very good person who just happened to,
that's not how people work.
The thing is, they spilled their coffee that morning, and now
suddenly they're racist.
Well, the interesting thing about it is that because people do learn essentially what the boundaries are, right?
Yeah, and they're always trying to fucking find that line.
Oh, they're always trying to find a line. But the interesting thing I think with the Riot example is actually that they did find that through essentially their rehabilitation stuff, anybody who did end up getting flagged for some sort of toxic behavior, when they came off of their ban or whatever else, like they had it's only like a 10% what you call recidivism, which is someone doing it again, right? So in other words, like 90% of people they're like, okay, I'll shape up. So it is the case that it works, but the problem is it has to happen once, right? And if you just know, so say you go in a community and if it's very clear everywhere. So for example, in the platformer, my guess is we'll have some language when you publish a game, when you publish a level, we'll be like,
oh, we're going to
by
tell
the
you,
way,
if you fuck around, you are banned forever.
if you're like spelling weird shit with blocks in here, if
we see one goddamn swastika,
oh yeah,
you are
so
burned to the
done.
ground.
Yeah, we're just done with you.
So I think our plan is to make it so that you are just banned from publishing levels.
Yeah.
So basically, the thing that allows you to put content out for other players to enjoy, if you're using that to actually ruin other players' experience, then
You just don't get to use it anymore. Yeah. Well, I think a lot of this too is, and we talk about this a lot, trying to figure out what's the right strategy. Because what feels good is, and I think for something like esports, you gotta fire people and ban them from the game, because those are real people. You can see them. You know, there's and the relationship is very clear. People are signing contracts and shit. That's very understandable and unambiguous, and also it's a much more tightly controlled in a smaller group of people. When it comes to an online game of some sort, I don't think that banning people is necessarily the right strategy, but not because they don't deserve to be banned. I think this is where the conflict comes in, you know, because we want to punish people,
right?
Because
like throw them out of the bar,
yeah, because you're fucking angry at them, right? Like you want to punish them, right. But the problem with certain, especially certain kinds of punishment, and the kind of people that you're punishing is that most of them are real full of themselves. And they cannot possibly believe that they were in the wrong. Yeah, it's literally impossible for them to believe that. The usual
explanation people say is, I was playing this game and then I got permanently banned for no reason.
Yeah. Or because somebody couldn't take a joke.
Right. And Riot, whatever. I mean, Riot started doing this thing where they would just include the chat log associated with whatever your ban was. So that, like, with the, like, hey, you got banned, here's the chat.
Here's what you said. Yeah.
And that way you can't be like, why, for no reason. It's like, well, actually, you know.
And of course, they're just trying to cut down on customer service requests. Yeah. You know, so I get that. Right. But the problem with banning somebody is that now you've taken somebody, you've cut off access, completely cut off access to a thing that they've spent a bunch of time in. And they're incapable of seeing that as a fair action, you know? And so now, where's their time going to go? It's either going to go into another game, or it's going to go into trying to bring you down or get around the ban. Right. And so if a person, like if their friends are in that game, if they've played a fuck ton of that game, now you, the company, have become their enemy. And now they got all this time because they're not playing your game anymore. Right. You know? And so we talk a lot about, and I'm not going to say anything specific about what we're going to try to do, because of course people are going to try to find that and use that against us. But we're trying to come up with strategies that reduce that as much as possible. Right. So that it's not a banning first, just get people out strategy. It's how do you just keep people from doing harm?
Well, it's
it's not about punishment. It's about prevention of harm.
Right. To me, this is why I love. So Twitter has a mute button as well as a block button.
The mute button is great.
Muting somebody is so much better than blocking them, because when you block somebody, they know they've been blocked.
Yep. And again, now they get angry about it. They yell at you.
Right. They will find ways. But if you mute them, they can send you messages all day.
Yep.
And you will never see a single one of them.
Beautiful.
So they still get to feel like they're beating up on somebody.
They're just shouting into the void.
And you get the satisfaction of knowing that they're spending all day yelling at nothing. Yeah. Right. So everybody gets to win then.
Yep.
So
I think, and the beauty of this is if this was much more widely adopted, then the sort of uncertainty around it would make it so that if somebody didn't get a response when they were trying to harass somebody, you know, then now they'd be like, "Ooh, I don't even know if these are going through." Like, and now you have to decide: am I going to keep? Now you're going to get kind of embarrassed. You're like, "Am I just yelling into a void?" You know, does nobody even see these horrible things that I want them to see? You know,
you're assuming a high level of self-reflection.
Yeah, which is perfect, because they're not going to have that. And so what they're going to do instead is they're just going to tire themselves out.
Yeah,
well, screaming, and then they won't be screaming at somebody else.
Right. There was a really interesting article, and I think it was in Polygon, talking to a few devs about this problem that harassment is somehow become part of the job description for dealing with harassment for devs, to the extent that, you know, if you're on Twitter now and you make a patch, someone's going to tell you should go die or whatever else. Like someone said that they were happy I got cancer at one point. Like, we had all sorts of really fucked up stuff happen, and we just mute it and then we just move on. But the thing is, like, the fact that that's sort of
just par for the course.
For some reason, it's like culturally fine for a lot of people to do is just real weird. Yep. Really weird. And I think it's one of those things that, of course, coming into,
if you know one of those people, by the way, just make sure you just take them
and punch them in the face.
No,
repeatedly until they die.
You just gently sit down with them. You look them right in the eyeballs and you say, you know, you're a piece of shit.
And then you punch them in the face. So
then you can punch them after that. That's fine.
Yeah. But to be clear, we aren't advocating that people commit acts of violence against. Right.
This is why I say just tell them they're a piece of shit.
That's fine.
That's fine.
So I think it's one of those things where, I mean, you know, it's just weird. And I think this next kind of chunk of, I think, the internet is going to be figuring out this particular problem, I think, in a cultural way.
It started with the Wild West, and everyone was like, this is where freedom of speech is truly free, where you can just, there are no rules and no laws and, you know, nothing. And that was bad. That was a bad move.
Yeah, it's starting to get
And it's all fucking anonymous.
Yep. So I think things are going to be changing a little bit, and there's been plenty of attempts from various companies to try to wrangle this stuff. So we'll have a go at it. We'll see how many death threats we get for making a level building game.
Uh-huh.
Oh, we're gonna get some.
Let's just back up and look at that.
Let's make a fun toy for people to play with, where they can make their own platforming levels and play.
Also, here's a question. Speaking of fun
how
toys,
many death threats does that lead to?
If you just made like a toy, if you made like a little action figure, how many people who make action figures do you think get death threats?
Oh, tons.
I bet all of them.
You think so?
Yeah. How many parents have you met?
Oh, that's true.
Yeah.
We did talk to that one parent that one time. That was not fun.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Parents
get real protective.
Mm-hmm.
And they, turns out, are also people.
And it turns out people are pieces of shit.
Yep. And I mean, how many of these people on the internet who are saying all these horrible things, I bet a lot of them are parents.
Yep. It's weird.
So, hey.
Cut it out.
Yeah.
And the rest of them are those parents' kids. So,
yeah. So, I mean, no matter what, you will find these folks in all walks of life.
Disgusting.
All right.
Yep.
So we got to blaze through the remaining news, because we got to get at least one question.
Let's go.
All right. All right. Next piece of news. We got to hit this real quick. On Gama Sutra, there is a blog post which everybody should read as a perfect example of really bad statistical analysis.
Mm-hmm. And we're going to put someone on blast here.
Raf Koster,
who
with
wrote
a K.
No relation.
Wrote a book called The Theory of Fun for Games. It's a very widely popular book. I've read it. I personally didn't derive too much from it, but apparently a lot of people enjoyed it. But yeah, this post on Gama Sutra is really weird.
Called The Cost of Games.
Mm-hmm.
There's all kinds of weird metrics that he's using.
Well, to me, the most hilarious part of the whole thing is that, actually, sorry, there are two super hilarious parts. He sort of prefaces the thing talking about a forecast he made. And by the way, if you ever hear somebody say, "Here's my forecast," just walk away. Whatever comes next, that's not valuable information to you. But he said, the last forecast, he's like talking about some big talk he gave in 2005 or something about some sort of bottoming out kind of event in the industry. And he made some little, so he mentioned that in the top of this post, and then sort of as an aside, sort of made some little comment about how that didn't come to pass because, these major changes in the industry happened. And this is why you can't forecast things. And
he's like, but this time, here's my forecast. Yeah,
and then without
there won't be any unforeseen events this time.
Right, without recognizing the irony, he just goes right into this next set of forecasts. And then these forecasts, he admits at the very top, he's like, my data set's very limited. It had like 250 data points in it, right? My data set's very limited. It's skewed toward AAA, which means it's not even just AAA. So it's even more limited because it's just a random smattering of 250, which is almost 0 games, right? And then he just does this like number crunch and kind of shows stuff on graphs. And then he even says, I use the naive approach of just putting a ruler on my screen to sort of like
to
estimate a trend line, right?
Yeah.
And, so the whole thing is just fucking wacky.
My favorite line was he puts up a graph, and then the immediate next sentence is something along the lines of, "Now don't put too much stock in this graph because," and then he explains why his data is bad.
Right.
Why is this graph here?
This is the thing that was so crazy to me, because he seems like a smart guy who is actually being thoughtful about all of this, right? And as you should, if you're doing any analysis at all. And the reason he did things like just put a ruler on the screen and draw it was because he was making the point that this is very noisy. These are like, anything I put on here is not going to be accurate, right? But he then, despite the fact that he's clearly smart and he's thinking about this in a smart way, he goes on to make forecasts anyway, and then spits out a bunch of opinions about what we should be doing as an industry, and we as developers as part of that industry, to sort of offset these inevitable futures that we're heading towards.
These forecasts.
It was
so
real weird.
So
very weird.
You should question everything that you read, just period,
or listen to.
Yeah, or the smarter somebody sounds, the more careful you got to be,
because they might be making stuff up,
even on accident, right?
Even on accident.
That was the part that was so baffling to me. Is like, one side of your mouth talking about how this is very noisy. It's you can't. This doesn't mean very much, etc. And the other side being like, so here's what I think is going to happen.
Right.
Yeah. So I mean,
and then also saying the last time I said this is what I thought was going to happen, it didn't happen.
Now it would have been fine if he said, I tried to do some analysis and I wasn't able to draw any conclusions. Here's why, because of here's all the reasons why this data is bad, right? Like that would have been a great post actually.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But then he went and drew conclusions anyway. So yeah, everybody should read this. It's on Gama Sutra, gamasutra.com. The article's called The Cost of Games. It should be in the blogs section because it just came out a few days ago.
I think it's particularly important because because of all the comment activity, I can see that people were like getting really behind this idea, which reminds me of all the Indie apocalypse bullshit that happened a few years ago.
So this is, as soon as I read that, I heard Adam's voice in my head going, "You can't possibly say this," right? Which is Adam's favorite phrase.
You can't possibly know this.
You can't possibly know this. So that happened. Other news, Sam got LASIK.
Yeah. I now have laser eyes.
Yeah.
It was rad.
You have a very slight red circular ring around your iris.
Yes, they did attach a suction device to my eye to hold it still, and then they pushed on it so hard that I went blind.
Yeah, to hold your eye,
part.
because they got to hold your eye still while
make it flat.
while they use a fucking
flat.
laser to cut
Your cornea off.
your cornea off.
Is it your cornea? Yeah. So they just like poof, gone.
They got to do that.
And then you go over, and then you lay down, and then they put these like hook things in your eyes, kind of like
Clockwork Orange.
No, I think it was maybe The Evil Within. There's some other video game where there's a picture of like an eyeball that's like being held open by some stuff.
But it's Clockwork Orange. It's
Clockwork.
That's the classic.
It looks like that.
Yep.
It actually doesn't feel bad though. So this is the problem: is that they have like they have
Quite nice.
It was fine, and
It was like an eye massage.
Well, it wasn't quite that good, but like because they're like numbing your eyeballs a ton, and so you actually can't feel anything. But we watched the procedure before because there's someone else in front of us, and they have like it's sort of like a surgery bay that you can just watch what's happening, and they have video monitors that are on the eyeballs.
So you see a huge close up of the eye,
and it's like looking red and pissed off, and there's like hooks in it in your lids holding down. But it was actually like going through it was pretty much fine.
and it took like 10 minutes.
It literally took 10 minutes, and then I sat up, and he was like, "Okay, can you read the clock?" I look over, and I was like, "Yes, weird." And your vision's real cloudy. It's like, so I guess the best way I would put it as far as the whole LASIK experience goes is once you get it done, it's a lot like if you were a kid and you spent like too much time at the pool, and like your vision gets kind of like clouded because like so much chlorine is in your eyes, right?
Yeah, you're going chemically blind.
Basically. So that's basically how you come out of the surgery. Like everything's real cloudy. And then about half an hour later, it starts kind of stinging a bit. And they're like, someone was like, "Oh," or like the receptionist was like, "Oh yeah, it's really not fun." But I was like, "This is fine." I just laid on the couch with my eyes closed for 4 hours. And during that time, it ramped up a little bit. But again, it pulling it back to the swimming metaphor, it felt just like a bad chlorine sting. Mm-hmm. Not even horrible, just like
your eyes were just kind of dried out.
Yeah, just like kind of ow. And then
had a rough afternoon.
Yeah, and then weirdly, 4 hours, it's like just 4 hours later, the pain just stopped. Like it was just like off.
Eyeballs do heal real fast.
It was fucking weird. And then I could just look around. And so
then you're fine. Yeah,
so I got the surgery at 1, and then by 6 o'clock, so I was very confused. Because I was like, I literally had my eyes ripped.
Yeah, you're like, I thought this was supposed to be
a
surgery.
And then by about 6 o'clock, I turned to my wife and I was like, "Do you want to? Should we go out?
You want to go
like,
watch a movie?"
Like, I gotta use these things. Yeah. And then it's been really weird because actually at night, what I'm used to at night is if I don't have glasses on. Also, I pushed imaginary glasses up on my face yesterday while looking in a mirror. That was weird. And then
you just poke yourself in the
nose. Like that. And then
you're like, I'm looking in the mirror. I can see myself, so I must be wearing glasses.
Yes.
Yeah, right.
And then at night, I usually take out my contacts right before bed.
So if I just poke yourself in the eye.
Well, but I had this like really intense drive to to do that. To go in the bathroom and like make it so I can't see anymore. Which I could do in a very horrifying way right now. But
that's true.
But yeah, so
take your corneas off.
I think the worst part is actually just wearing the goggles at night because you're not supposed to like rub your eyes, right? And the problem is the goggles they're not actually goggles. So they look like
safety goggles that you wear when you're cutting wood or something.
So they actually have huge holes.
You should get like a ski mask, like a ski goggles.
Yeah, because they actually have huge holes, right?
Yeah.
So I woke up yesterday because I was rubbing on my eyes.
Do you want to borrow some of my swimming goggles?
I don't want to wear like tight goggles.
You can loosen
the shit.
Loosen them up.
That's what I found.
They just need to block access
just a little bit. Yeah. So because I was wearing my
ski goggles though. That's definitely. If I get LASIK, I'm going to get myself some ski goggles.
Pop them on.
Yeah.
That's actually been the worst part because they're so loose that you can't, and they're not like ski goggles where they're sort of attached to your head.
Yep.
Meaningfully, and
so they're basically glasses.
They're basically glasses.
So they were glasses. They're like, you know how you were trying to escape? Well, now it's even worse.
Yes. Except now you're going to keep escaping because you're doing it in your sleep.
Yeah, I think the overall, we talking about the surgery experience. The overall thing was actually perfectly fine. I think the funniest part about it is that I went to it's a LASIK Plus, which I think is like a chain all over the country now.
Just your regular sort of fast food LASIK
basically.
Joint. Yep.
And it's funny because like they're very intense about social media stuff, right? And so as I was going to surgery, they're like, oh, you can Facebook live video this if you want. Like they have like a setup there. So you can just like put your camera, like your phone or whatever, just do it. And I was like, no, I am so not into this, you know?
What kind of fucked up dystopia are we in
But
now?
it's also hilarious because
It is pretty cool.
being able to see with a relatively minor procedure is it's a great pitch, right? Get behind that.
Don't watch it.
If your
honest.
pitch is like have all your buddies also want to get LASIK by watching you have your eye flattened
And then cut.
and cut
Flattened,
open.
cut, flapped open, and shot with a laser.
That's not as good of a pitch. At
I
least in
have
my
to
opinion.
admit though, so I watched I went to watch because I want to do this, but I have weak ass baby eyes where my eyes are very sensitive.
Just a bit creek cries.
They start watering just at the, like if somebody like picks up a flashlight, my eyes just start watering because I'm like, what if they pointed at me? So, and I've never been able to do contacts. I've never been able to do eye drops, just anything. And so I was like, I'm going to watch this, see what it is. I watched a woman go before Sam, and it was horrifying. But then after I kind of got over it, I watched it happen to Sam, and I was thinking, okay,
Seems fine.
I could see myself doing this, except for the recovery period for that extra couple of weeks. You got to be putting eye drops in all the time, and I can't do that.
You're more worried about the eye drops.
Yeah. Well, because the fact is, if I'm being held down on a table with a suite of of medical professionals around me, and they are attaching instruments to my face, I'm kind of looking at that sort of like going to the orthodontist.
Sure.
You know, I'm going there. I've got this weird fucking horrible metal apparatus in my mouth, or maybe at the dentist, they're stabbing you in the gums with that spike that I don't know why they do that, but that's just one of those things, right? And so, I've many times in my life, I've laid down on a table
And been stabbed
face
a bunch
up
of times.
and had horrible things done to my face.
Yep.
That's something I'm very used to. But then after that, I never had to put eye drops in, which is worse. So what I did was, after Sam's LASIK, I said, I'm going to fucking do this.
Yep.
And it's 2018.
Yep. Quit
So
fucking
I got to
around.
do it. So I went to the Walgreens. I got some artificial tears, and I went home and I tried to put eye drops.
How'd it go?
It went terribly. My face was just covered in
Your own tears.
in my own tears, as well as the artificial tears. And then later that night, I'm going to do it. Tried it again, all over the place. And then the next morning, I woke up and I was enraged, and I ran into the bathroom, and I just like
squirting
I was
yourself
just
in the eye.
I ripped my eye open and just shot the eye drop, and I was like, yes! And I got it. I got it in there. Then I did the other eye with the same level of.
See, the thing is like the level of intensity and trauma that you're experiencing from putting these eye drops in is already just so much more than what.
But here's the thing. Here's the thing. By now, so this morning I woke up. I went in the bathroom, grabbed the eye drops.
Screamed.
I just looked up,
Let out a battle.
pulled my eye open, dropped it right in. I was like, yes! I did miss the other eye, but I'm working on that. and then once I get that down, then I got to spend some time just poking myself in the eye. Like
Just rub it around.
When people use contact lenses, they're always just putting their finger in their eye. And apparently that's a fine thing to do.
It's whatever.
And so I need to desensitize my eyes to the concept
Definitely
of having
wash your
things
hands
in them. Yeah, I wash my hands first, and then just kind of poke myself in the eye. For a while. Just do that for 5 minutes a day.
Well, I don't think you really need to poke yourself in the eye because you're not going to have to do that.
Yeah,
post-LASIK.
but somebody's going to be poking me in the eye.
That's true.
Right?
When you go,
But they're gonna hold your fucking eyelids open with the deadly horrible instrument. So you're not gonna be closing your eyeballs during that process.
Listen, I got real strong eyelids. I don't know if their equipment
Can handle it.
can handle it. I need to be able to cooperate because if not,
true.
I'm just gonna rip those claw things right out of their hands with my snapping turtle eyelids. It's just the way it's gonna be. Okay,
I'm glad you finally overcame this. This has been like this is
my
a 30-year
entire
journey.
life. I remember I have vivid memories of even being in I think second grade, and I had some kind of an eye thing, and I had to do eye drops. I couldn't fucking do it, and the nurse was trying to get them in there, and I'm just screaming. It's like it's been bad. It's been bad my whole life. So I'm doing it. It's 2018 now.
right.
So who gives a shit?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Sam, you had one more thing you wanted to talk about.
We'll skip it for this week. We have enough.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Let's get on to a question, I guess.
This question comes from podcast.bscotch.net.
Yeah. But yeah, podcast.bscotch.net.
As would others if we were to answer more.
Which, we already talked about how that whole thing works earlier.
It's real good.
It's real good. All right. First question comes from Wondering Monster. Seth, you mentioned liking EVE Online. What kind of dastardly deeds have you gotten up to in there? So for those who don't know about EVE Online, it's a game, but it's not really a game. It's more like a sandbox. You build spaceships and there's no point.
The best thing to do is, if you don't know what it is, look up the video, This is Eve, which is a great trailer for it, which is all basically player capture video, a bunch of people screaming while trying to essentially do various
blow each other up, basically.
various military procedures.
Yeah. So EVE is a unique game in the sense that the content for the game is the other players, kind of like what you would see in something like a first person shooter or whatever, except for the fact that EVE is an MMO. And so there's thousands and thousands of other players roaming around in their ships in space. Mm-hmm. It's very punishing in the sense that the game has no mechanisms to keep bad things from happening to you. And when bad things do happen to you, there are permanent consequences.
That's just what happened now.
That's what happened now, just like in life, right? So you go, I'm going to get this super badass spaceship. And this is something that new players do a lot, is they go, bigger spaceships are obviously better. I'm going to get a big one. Mm-hmm. Turns out bigger ones are real expensive. And
bigger targets.
And there's multiple dimensions of sort of understanding in the game in terms of what to do, what not to do, how to do things, how to fly your ships well and stuff like that. And it's not like an RPG where just, being a higher level means you just get to kill things now, because there's no rules, right? Mm-hmm. So you might buy this big ship as a newer player, spend all your money on it, and then because you don't know what the fuck you're doing, you don't know where to go, you have no friends to back you up, you just take your ship somewhere that you shouldn't have gone, and then like 200 Russians show up, and which there's an entire section of space populated by Russians. Mm-hmm. I don't know why. That's just the way it is. 200 Russians show up and just in their tiny, tiny little cheap ships that they don't give a shit about, and they just blow you up like that. And so it's a very interesting experience.
So what have you done? What's your dastardly deeds?
I haven't done anything super dastardly. I was trying to pull off a heist, but it was.
Have you given up on the heist?
Well, I'm biding my time. So the way that ships are built in the game is with these things called blueprints, and it's basically just an item that you use to sort of like you install it into this interface, and then you use that. It's like a recipe, right? Like in Crashlands. And there's two types of blueprints. There's copies and there's originals. Originals can be researched for efficiency of time and stuff like that. And they're very valuable because you can use originals to create copies and then sell those copies to people.
Gotcha.
So original blueprints are very, very pricey. And just coincidentally, blueprints take almost no cargo space because they're super, super tiny.
Okay.
So you can steal a shitload of them if you can manage to get access to them. And so one of the things that people do when they pull off heists is they join a player corporation, a player group. They try to work their way up the chain of command by just, being a really good member of the group, right? And taking initiative and taking leadership roles and stuff. And then as soon as you get access to the section of the corporation's sort of inventory where they keep their blueprints, you get a tiny, tiny, super fast ship that's really hard to catch. You just load it up with all the blueprints, and then you just get the fuck out of there. And now they're yours.
Right.
That's it. No, they can't do anything about it. And if they blow your ship up, they're probably going to destroy most of the blueprints. So that sucks. You got them now, right? And so it's something I've always wanted to try, and I'm working on it. But it's a long game.
It's a nice outlet for sort of getting out some conniving and some subterfuge that you don't really get to do in the real world because there's too many consequences, right?
Yes. Well, not only that, but like this is, it's weird because on the one hand, you can go, oh man, like these players were building up this corporation and then somebody just stole everything. But the fact is that that Eve players love this shit.
Yeah.
Like even
That is
if
the
it
game.
happens to them, they're like, oh man, that's fucking awesome. But damn, but awesome. Right. Cause it's kind of like
part of the experience.
Yeah, it's like when you're playing chess and somebody puts you in checkmate, you're like, fuck, I spent the whole game building up
Right.
this strategy. Right. You're like, well, I guess that's how it goes because it's chess. Right. So it's a very interesting thing. So
unless you're a bad sport.
Yes.
yeah, but those people don't last in that game.
No, they wouldn't play you.
They start playing, they get blown up the first time and they realize
They scream
"Fuck,
a
my
bunch
ship is-"
probably, and
Yeah, they're like, my ship is gone. And then they just stop playing. So let's hit one more question because it was pretty quick.
Sure.
All right. Next question comes from imcade, who says, sorry if you have already had this question. I've only listened to about half the podcasts. Well, you better get on that. What is the craziest and creepiest fan interaction you guys have had?
Creepiest.
I don't think we've had any creepy ones.
Creepy ones.
Because our fans are fucking awesome.
Yeah, they're pretty rad.
I think the craziest one, this isn't one that I had personally, but was just that during Pixel Pop, we had a fan drive from Connecticut
to St. Louis.
to come say hi, which was pretty fucking awesome.
Yeah, so we hung out. It was really fun. I think the crazy one for me was actually shortly after Crashlands. I was just walking into the grocery store with my Butterscotch shirt on, and some like probably 15-year-old kids walking out, and he looked at me, and I looked at him, and then he goes, Butterscotch? And I go, yeah. And he goes, Sam? And I go, yeah. And he goes, huh? And then he just like ran out of the grocery store. And I was like, that was fucking weird. But all right, that was fun. I dig it. Yeah, no creepy ones, thankfully.
Well, that we've talked about our Ashley Birch experience at GDC before, where we had that.
Yep, it just happens. You know about people.
Yeah,
and
it's
you see
dumb
them,
because
you're
we're
like,
all just people. For some reason, it just becomes terrifying when you meet them.
couldn't talk to her.
you run away.
Tiny Tina.
But yeah, if you see somebody, if you're in St. Louis and you see somebody wearing a Butterscotch Shenanigans shirt, there's a pretty good chance that it's one of us. Pretty good chance. And if you have any doubt, I'm pretty sure our pictures are on the website. So you could put two and two together, get your phone out and be like, hold on, and then look it up, and then you'll know. And then just come say hey, and we'll just chat for entire moments. So
At least.
yeah. All right. Well, that's all the time we have for this week. We'll try to get to some more questions next week.
Maybe. Who knows?
Maybe. We'll see.
We're not gonna try to do anything. We're just doing whatever.
We're just gonna whatever happens. That's what we're gonna.
20 great teen.
Yep, 20 great teen. All right. Well, we'd like to thank our producer Fat Bard for making us sound good. Thanks to our community moderators who keep our Discord and forums running. If you'd like to get more involved in the community here, you can hop into our Discord server, which is at discord.gg/Buddyscotch. Come say hey. We've now got just like 220 something folks just rascaling around in there. We have a whole bunch of channels for people who are into game development, who are making games. We got a channel for writers. So we actually realized that we have this community of people who are all just really into creating things. So we kind of broke our Discord server out into having these different channels.
Although nobody actually talks in the writing one.
Well, they're too busy writing is the thing.
But not writing messages. In
But
Discord.
especially during National Novel Writing Month, that channel's going to be off the hook. So we got that. There's a music channel. There's an art channel. So there's people making all kinds of cool stuff in there. So if you're just into, making things or talking about making things at least.
or talking to people or being a person or talking.
If you're into, just not being dead, hop into our Discord server. Again, that's at discord.gg/Buddyscotch.
Which wasn't a threat. It was just sort of a general comment.
Oh, no, it's that's a death threat.
It's the real deal.
If you're into not being dead,
Show up.
you better get in there. All right. Well, if you'd like to adorn your body with Butterscotch merch, you can check out our merch shop, which is at shop.buddyscotch.net. And if you'd like to send us stuff that isn't alive, you can send us stuff to our mailbox, which is over at mailbox.buddyscotch.net. Thank you all for listening, and we'll see you next week.
Goodbye.
Bye.